I hope the date's correct. This is 5 on 20 News with Frank Powers.
And Joel Foster. It's Friday, September 8th. That is right.
Casual Friday.
Casual Friday, everyone. Yeah.
Get out of here.
That's right. I hope you're feeling casual and creative, Tucson.
Yeah.
That's where we are.
Local headlines.
Local headlines. Let's do it. So the Tucson City Council has decided to repeal a gun ordinance under orders from the state Supreme Court. The ordinance was passed in 2005 and requires that all guns confiscated or surrendered to the city be destroyed unless they could be used for police training purposes. In response, the Attorney General filed a lawsuit against Tucson and threatened $115 million in state revenues if the laws are not repealed. The state Supreme Court later sided with the state, agreeing that if the city did not repeal the law, then it would forfeit the funds. This was because of the law signed by Governor Doug Ducey in 2016 called SB 1487 that allows the state to withhold revenues from any city that passes an ordinance that violates state law. On Tuesday, the council voted 4-3 to comply with the Supreme Court ruling to avoid losing funding. City Councilor Steve Kozachick, who voted against complying, said that it was a defiant vote intended to tell the state legislator to stay out of our stuff. Kozachick and other councilors claim that Tucson has the right to set its own rules because of its charter written in 1929 under the so-called Home Rule. Tucson Mayor Jonathan Rothschild also said that he voted to rescind the law not because he believes it's right, but because it would be irresponsible to threaten such a large amount of money. Now, City Attorney Mike Rankin will draft a letter to Attorney General Mark Brnovich notifying him that the city will comply. The council has already suspended the rule in December while the city and state battled it out in the courts. Then in September, the Supreme Court made its ruling. What an inspiring moment to see our city leaders abandon their principles for a good chunk of money. Don't expect the Sanctuary City Declaration anytime soon, that's for sure.
Yeah, don't hold your breath, unfortunately. Money talks, right? All right, Arizona environmental officials warned visitors and residents yesterday to only eat limited amounts of certain kinds of fish because of mercury contamination. Yum. Yellow and largemouth bass found at Canyon Lake in Maricopa County, Becker Lake and Black Canyon Lake were found to have elevated levels of mercury, and officials say that consumption should be limited. Sounds like the right thing to do. Mercury has now been identified in different species of fish across 17 bodies of water in 10 Arizona counties. The World Health Organization warns that exposure to even small amounts of mercury can have toxic effects to the nervous and digestive systems. The Arizona Department of Game and Fish have also developed a mapping system to alert people of areas with high mercury levels. The map contains 3 fish consumption categories colored red, orange, and green. Red represents areas where certain fish have been labeled do not eat, such as the smallmouth bass in Tonto Creek. Orange squares represent areas where consumption should be limited to 2.5 ounces of fish per week and no more than 2 ounces for children. Green areas are for areas of the state where the fish are fine to eat, such as Tempe's Town Lake and Scottsdale's El Dorado Park. Because of the new system, all Arizona Red Lobster locations will be now known as Green Lobster, a name only slightly less appetizing than Red Lobster's food.
You got to try the cheesy bread, though.
Yeah,
try that cheesy bread.
It's all about the cheesy bread.
I've been to Red Lobster like once. So Arizona officials said yesterday that they want to limit doctors from prescribing no more than 5 days worth of opioids for people who haven't been prescribed the pain-killing medication. The proposal is part of Governor Doug Ducey's plan to battle opioid use by issuing a state of emergency in June. The Arizona Department of Health Services came up with 12 suggestions that they think will put a dent in the problem. One would require doctors to submit e-prescriptions instead of paper prescriptions to cut down on fraud. That's not happening yet. The department also suggested requiring pharmacies to make sure patients aren't prescribed both an opioid and a benzodiazepine, which increases the risk of overdose. The group's goal is to limit access to the drug, improve prescription practice, provide better access to the addicted, and to target doctors who illegally prescribe and overprescribe opioids. In October, Ducey signed an executive order to limit refills to 7 days worth of opioids, including both prescriptions for children and state employees and those covered under Access, the state Medicare system. But the limit excludes opiate prescriptions for children with cancer, chronic disease, and traumatic injury. However, the limits were met with some critics who said that the order would increase costs and punish those who need opioids, such as those suffering from chronic pain like elderly patients, the sick, and of course Slash, former Guns N' Roses guitarist.
Yeah. He needs his opioids.
Yeah.
Arizona Democrats and some Republicans are opposing the Trump administration's announcement to end the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA. Unsurprisingly, Representative Rahul Grijalva was against the decision, calling it an attempt to criminalize a whole generation of people who willingly trusted the federal government with their personal information. He said that forcing them to return to a state of fear is, quote, not only immoral, but runs afoul of our immigrant heritage as a nation. Representative Ruben Gallego compared the DACA decision to Trump's pardon of former Maricopa Sheriff Joe Arpaio. He said that Trump is utterly unable to control his impulse to indulge in the most hateful elements of our society. But it wasn't just progressives like Grijalva and Gallego who weren't happy with the Trump administration. Republican Senator John McCain called the decision a, quote, unacceptable reversal of the promises made to DACA recipients. Representative Paul Gozer, disagreed, agreeing with the decision by saying that DACA does not belong in the U.S. because it's a nation that lives and dies by the rule of law, unless it involves a sheriff racially profiling citizens, in which case, you're pardoned. Gozer added that, I am so happy to Mr. Trump moving us towards stricter rules that protect the wallet of the taxpayer and defend the safety of our citizens. If DACA is rescinded, economists say that it will cost the state $280 billion in lost tax revenue. Wallets. It will also force those covered up to go back to living in the shadows, which is kind of unsafe. Senator Jeff Flake and Grijalva both said that they look forward to working together to craft legislation dealing with DACA recipients. However, Grijalva warned that it would not be held hostage for the big, beautiful border wall or adding more ICE agents onto the federal payroll. The Trump administration hopes that they can at least get a small, pretty border wall out of the deal.
Yeah,
it's something.
Aim for what you can.
Exactly.
All that Gozer talk, you gotta watch out. Zool is not far behind. Check your refrigerators, okay? So I want to take this moment right now to talk about the program you're watching right now. Here at 5 on 20, we are undertaking a new kind of citizen journalism. We're going to give you the news as we see it, and we want more people to speak up with us. We need writers, hosts, anchors, camera people, sound people, the whole gamut. The times require a new way of informing ourselves, so join us. Do it. Do it now.
Do it!
Email us at creativetucson.org to get involved. And if you think there's a story we're missing, a person we should interview, or an upcoming event we should cover, or have any news tips for us, shoot an email to info@creativetucson.org. We're here for you, and we want to cover all the stories from all points of view. So don't be strangers. Come make some friends. So now in national and international news, Joel.
A Senate committee voted Thursday to contribute $10 million to a United Nations climate change agency, which was threatened with being eliminated. The Senate Appropriations Committee voted 16 to 14, it was close, to approve an amendment by Senator Jeff Merkley to restore funding for the UN's Framework Convention on Climate Change. These payments have been made annually by the U.S. since 1993, but looked as though they might be stopped. Trump called for an end to the funding in his first budget proposal released this year. Budget Director Mick Mulvaney also said that the funds were wasteful. However, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, the former oil man, keep in mind, disagreed with the Trump administration, urging the funding to continue so that the U.S. could, quote, keep a seat at the table. Again, an oil man encouraged them to pay into climate change. Just think about that. But that makes sense, considering that Tillerson would agree with Trump, since the president prefers a tiny desk to tables.
Tiny, tiny desks.
He does like his little, there it is.
It's tiny desks. I love it. The Department of Homeland Security now. Department of Homeland Security is planning a series of immigration raids across the country later this month, targeting 8,400 undocumented immigrants, according to an NBC News report. Officials told NBC that it will be a 5-day operation beginning on September 17th. That's going to be a terrible week, which is ironically American Citizenship Day. Great. ICE says that it will be the largest operation of its kind in the history of the agency. Operation Mega, as it's maturely called, will focus on capturing undocumented immigrants who have committed crimes and are involved with criminal gangs, which sounds great, although Homeland Security didn't specify which types of crimes they would target. An official told NBC that even though criminals are being targeted, other undocumented immigrants may be swept up in the raids as, quote, collateral. This is why the raids were originally dubbed Operation Whoops, before being changed to Operation Mega, because Operation MAGA would have been a little too on the nose even for Mr. Trump.
I kind of would have loved them, just Operation MAGA.
Yeah,
I'll go all the way with it.
Just go for it, right?
All right, Congress agreed to provide $15 billion in aid to victims of Hurricane Harvey today, which devastated Houston last week. Along with Harvey aid, the bill would fund the government through December 8th, which averts yet another disaster involving the debt ceiling. which we hear about, seems like every year. The president took the very uncharacteristic move of working with Democrats to pass the bill, which earned him criticism from conservative Republicans and media outlets like Breitbart, who are normally loyal to Trump. Republicans sought a more long-term deal over the debt ceiling that would extend beyond the 2018 midterms, and were looking to reduce government spending. They didn't get that. So sorry. Trump promised he would go back to opposing Democrats next week with a series of angry tweets on Monday accusing Hillary Clinton of causing the hurricanes. I look forward to that.
Yeah, Hurricane Hillary will be the next one named, I bet ironically. But let's talk about Hurricane Irma first. And Hurricane Irma ripped through the Caribbean last night, almost completely destroying the islands of St. Martin and Barbuda, I assume. Barbuda?
Barbuda, yeah.
Barbuda. Officials say that 95% of St. Martin and Barbuda wrecked, with the destruction described as nothing short of apocalyptic. Another hurricane known as Jose is headed right behind Irma and will hit the same islands by Saturday. The U.S. Consulate General in Curacao says that they believe 6,000 Americans are stranded on St. Martin and that it's working with other governments to try and get them to safety. The storm skirted the northern section of Puerto Rico as well, knocking out electricity for millions of people. Because the island lacks durable infrastructure, Puerto Rican officials say it could be months before electricity is fully restored. On St. Martin, where the land is split by French and Dutch authority, the French government announced that 9 people had been killed by the storm, while 7 more were missing. This morning, Irma tore through the islands of the Turks and Caicos with winds up to 150 miles per hour. No word yet on the extent of the damage on the island chain, as officials gave their all clear this morning, but say that many of the streets are flooded and power lines are indeed down. State of emergencies have been declared in Florida, South Carolina, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Next, Irma heads toward Florida, where Governor Rick Scott has ordered evacuation orders throughout the state. Scott warned the residents that they needed to leave if they are in evacuation areas and that authorities will not be able to save them until conditions improve. He also told reporters that weather analysts predict the storm will hit land with more force than Hurricane Andrew, which killed 60 people in 1992. One of the evacuees from the Florida Keys ended up being Rush Limbaugh himself, who less than a week ago actually called Hurricane Irma and other hurricanes a hoax to drive up business and further the climate change agenda. What do you think now, Rush? What do you think? You're rushing somewhere else now? Probably to safety.
I'm sure he'll apologize in his show, as he's known to do, right?
Yeah.
All right. And I'm going to end on a positive note here. The most powerful earthquake in decades occurred off the coast of southern Mexico last night, registering 8.1 and killing 30 so far, although that's rising by the minute. The earthquake is triggering fears of tsunami after the country suffered more than 20 aftershocks. Mexico is also gearing up for the landfall of Hurricane Katia. That's yet another hurricane, a Category 2 storm that's supposed to arrive on Saturday. The U.S. Geological Survey said that the epicenter was located 102 miles west of Tapachula in the state of Chiapas, close to the border of Guatemala. The 8.1 magnitude earthquake matched that of a powerful quake that hit Mexico City in 1985, which killed thousands of people. However, Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto said that it measured 8.2, which would make it the most powerful earthquake in over a century. It appears as though Mexico City largely escaped major damage, although millions of homes lost electricity throughout the night. Other areas of Mexico fared worse, including the state of Oaxaca, where 23 people were killed when hundreds of buildings were toppled. The governor of Chiapas State said 3 people were killed in San Cristobal, while 2 children were reportedly killed in the state of Tabasco. One when a wall collapsed. The other was a baby on a ventilator who died when the hospital's power went out. Tsunami warnings were sent out for the coasts of Guatemala, El Salvador, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Panama, and Honduras. No word on any sort of donations going on. Look for that to put in a message, but it seems like they're dealing with the chaos. So we'll have that up as soon as we find out. But I think we can speak for everyone when I say Mother Nature, we're sorry. Please stop attacking us. We promise to do better.
Yeah, did you say that was going to be a more positive note? That's what the hell happened
I was joking. I was being ironic.
Yeah, apparently, because I think the positive note is we're probably the stars of the horrible montage that's going to be, so hurricanes happen, more of this, earthquakes. We've seen all of these disaster movies, and we are now some of the B-roll.
Yeah,
the B-roll in the
guys,
background.
the spinning paper.
Yep,
And then, yeah,
that's
all
what's
right.
going to happen. So
Okay.
we're the B-roll of the horrible cataclysm that's attacking our entire world, known as Mother Nature.
Yeah.
Pretty brutal.
Okay.
So with that being said, don't forget, this was 5 on 20 News. I'm Frank Powers. That is, of course, Joel Foster. Okay, and please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube, our Facebook accounts, and for the latest of Creative Tucson content. Feel free to bother us at info@creativetucson.org. Thanks for hanging out with us. But right now, Joel's going to talk to us about what's coming up after the news. It's not this week in mediocrity.
It's going to be last
It's
week.
last week in mediocrity. This week was what? Hurricanes are coming. Hunker down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you're in Florida, run away.
Yes.
If you're in most places, run away. It seems like, and I'm sure we'll. What do we get in Arizona? We don't really get anything.
Monsoon season's over.
Yeah,
It's
monsoon
now
season's
it's not a dry heat.
Yeah.
It's a dry cool.
Right. Unless we get
So-
some crazy heat wave or something.
Yeah, we'll see.
So
And that
we're safe.
It always happens.
So-
as far as anything on the front, I think there's a wave of glitter coming tomorrow. There's a glitter ball in town. You should go check that out. It's happening
Oh,
on
cool.
Saturday night.
All right.
One of the best dance parties going.
Nice.
Shout out
All
to
right.
Kitty Cat. That's right. Glitter ball. It's going to be amazing.
Cool. All right.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about last week when we only had to worry about one hurricane. Remember that? Remember those safe days? And that was, of course, Hurricane Harvey. So we're going to talk about the reaction to Hurricane Harvey, which was kind of weird. And it'll be like one of those like back in the day kind of jams, you
Yeah.
know? Like I remember that from a week ago, because for every week now, it seems like about 6 years go by.
Totally.
So, yeah.
Life moves pretty fast. If you don't slow down and watch it, blah blah blah. Yearbook quote. So there you go. So there you go. So stay
Okay,
tuned.
see you in a minute.
Yep, it'll be Joel Foster's coming up. It's basically last week in mediocrity. So stay cool, stay classy, stay creative, Tucson. Thanks for hanging out. Give me a high five. Boom.
Boom.